Welcome to Talk to Me, a podcast to provide a safe and brave space to have courageous conversations about the changes we want to see for system-involved young people. The aim of this podcast is to support young people with issues that are commonly encountered in the foster care and juvenile justice systems, and offer resources to navigate and overcome these issues. We really have exciting guests, subject matter experts, and young people with lived experience on today's episode. Before we get started, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. The creators of this podcast recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tatatvion, Sereno, Quiche, and Chumash people. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past and present and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevate the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments. To learn more about the first people of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City/County Native American Indian Commission website at lanaic.lacounty.gov. Now on to the episode.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sherrie Bradford, and today I'm the host for the Talk to Me podcast, To Me Podcast. And I have these two lovely guests right here with me. So, this specific segment, we're going to be talking about systems improvement, how to improve the systems. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
So hi, I'm Johna Rivers. I'm 31 years old. I'm a former foster youth, the co-founder for Real to Real Global Youth Film Festival, board member for CASA Los Angeles, and a performing artist, as well as an entertainer.
Hi, my name is Soryoa Leonard. I'm 22 years old. I'm also from a foster. I'm currently in school, and I'm also a performing artist, youth advocate, and I've been in the foster care system since I was about 8. So it's been a long time coming, but thank you for having me here.
Okay, so we're going to go right into it. So, the first question I have are what are some of the challenges you face in the system? And as far as your goals. So, did any of the challenges keep you from your goals or keep you from getting housing or concrete resources or things of that nature?
Mm, I would say, when I share my story, I always tell people I have a unique story. Because for me, when it came to finding resources and navigating the system, I was fortunate enough to have social workers that cared about their job and kind of really showed up for me. So they kind of made that transition smooth for me. Where when I turned 21, I went to DCF. I stayed into THP Plus, right? Stayed until I was 21 to continue getting funded. They referred me to DCFS. And when I went down there, I got connected to the Right Way Foundation. And from there, a lot of other doors opened up. But I always share with people that for me, while a lot of people I know had a horrible experience when it comes to the system and finding resources or getting access to the resources and just their social workers not really caring about their transition, my experience was completely different. Like, for the most part, I can remember all my social workers' names because they were impactful in my life, was just how they showed up and really tried to make sure that not just me, but my big mama had everything she needed as well. My big mama was the person who took me in and who I lived with until I aged out.
Wow, I love to hear that. I've also, I can relate because I've heard so many horror stories, being in the system, seeing people that I've become close to, people that become family have to go through things that I never really had to experience. But there is also something that's common is this lack of stability. And that can alone on its own cause a lot of um a lot of the same distress that we go through. So I was also fortunate enough to be in the area where we had the support, we had like the funding for the social workers that were actually really, really taking care of us and making sure that we understood our needs and met our needs. But also, um, it felt like there was still a lot that I had to learn on my own. And I'm sure that a lot of foster youth have to learn on their own in the system, navigating the system, because there's the rules change every day. The laws change all the time. Whether you go from one state to another, whether there's a federal law that we're supposed to abide by, some social workers might not even know or had the training to understand that. So there's certain things we have to learn on our own, and to have a support system. I also went through the Right Way Foundation, and that was like one of the biggest um, indicators to me that there is still like stable support out there. Um, so I think one of the biggest issues for me in the system was also just not kind of understanding like the next steps, just having to figure that out as you go. But I think that's what also makes us resilient as foster youth. Like we kind of, life can be tough just in general, but when you're in the system, that just it changes from day to day. You really got to step up for yourself and show out, and you kind of develop this spirit of like resilience. So
Yeah, I agree, especially with the housing, right? I was homeless twice since aging out of the system, not because of um, the system per se, because right, I was already aged out, but because of all the rules that these housing programs have, a lot of them are really selective and choose like to pick the cream of the crop type of situation. And it's like if you're here to serve foster youth, then you're here to help foster youth. You shouldn't be worried about picking the cream of the crop because everybody know most foster youth are not cream of the crop. They can be developed to become that. But if you're not willing to put in the time and effort to develop that, and just turn your back on them, a lot of foster youth end up homeless or end up like, struggling with housing because they trying to find a program that would accept them and be able to find that kind of sense of stability. You know what I mean? And so I feel like a lot of the times, yeah, housing is one of the biggest issues when it comes to foster youth. A lot of us end up homeless, or end up couch surfing, having to revert back to traumatic people, which maybe are regular family members that be like, hey, can I come stay with you? And we go there and we re-traumatize by new experiences in those places. But it's like the system is not really uh, designed to help those that really need it, you know?
We are here, we're having some youth speak about their experiences. And from what you guys both said is this word resilience. And then you also said you have that supportive network of social workers, your big mama to help you along the way. And I know you said you just went through homelessness and then you also had your struggles of instability. But the youth was saying about he was resilient because he went to 15 different homes. So the next question I want to go into is what about your experience? Where was the turning point where you were like, forget what I'm going through and changing that narrative? So, because I was in the foster care system, like how you were saying with the resilience part, because I was in the foster system, I know these gaps. And that's the next question we're going to get into. What about your guys' experiences helped expose gaps to where now, in which whatever you guys doing, whether it's higher ed, whether it's your nonprofit organization, where you're fulfilling those gaps with the young people you're working with?
Ooh,
you would start darkies are that's a question. I can kind of go based off of what we were speaking on earlier a little bit too, because I think one of my biggest struggles in the foster care system now that I've kind of like centralized upon like changing was this stigma of foster youth being like a problem. Like that was so damaging. Even for me, I was never really a problem child. And I seen like people that I've become close to in the foster care system, also not necessarily problem children, just came from a bad environment and needed support. Like that's really what it was. And so I was lucky enough to have that support and just find it wherever I ended up going. But that wasn't always the case. Like I was kicked out a couple of times and blamed for something that wasn't necessarily my fault. It's just kind of how it falls. Like, and
it's not really our choice whether we're going to stay in a home or not, because it's not our home per se. There's just the superiority complex that is given upon like you entering the system. And so me realizing that, I'm like, I'm not gonna have nobody like label me or like tell me who I am when I'm supposed to be. Like, I know I have dreams, aspirations. This is a block of the road, child. Like, this is not something that um I'm gonna carry with me, but rather use, because there's ways to use it in the system to your advantage, but also to kind of empower, like, not just you. I did it a lot for my younger siblings too. I was kind of always the oldest. Even when I was meeting like my sisters in foster care, like just needing that kind of guidance. Like, okay, if I'm not gonna do this for myself, I'm gonna do it for them, and I'm gonna do it for my brothers who I also had gotten separated from. And so it's a lot of stuff that like I've taken kind of now, and it's kind of built my love for education. The school is kind of my way out. So that's kind of where that empowerment, that resilience, I guess, came from. Was y'all not about to put this on me, because we're some great kids, and at the time, like, it's just you need to show it when you can. When I said it on my graduation speech, I remember I was like, and then you could go. I said in my graduation speech, they say we fall beneath the cracks, but we barely scratch the surface. And I feel like every time I've been in an environment, I'm always like, we don't fall beneath the cracks. We're barely scratching the surface. And then you give a handout, whether it's like, I met Soraya actually at a conference. And I want to share this story because the resilience, I met her at a conference. I was speaking about my experiences as a Black young girl being in the foster home, like what, with the Mexican American family, told me to bleach my skin, all these different types of things. So for a long time, I didn't like my skin color. I didn't understand why I was getting pulled out and the girls who were in the same thing as me weren't getting pulled out, but my body was shaped differently. And I didn't understand because I didn't have Black people around teaching me about these things. And I had met her, we were talking for a good hour or so, got her contact, we were cool. And 5 months later, 6 months later, she called. She's like, I got into UCLA. You were one of the first people I wanted to let know. And I remember I tell that story to a lot of the youth I work with because it's youth like you that I meet that motivate me to do this work. Because like, ooh, I'm not getting emotional. But it really is youth like you, because if it's just a conversation or if it's just, hey, you know what, let me give you this opportunity for you to go to UCLA or for you to call me for a big moment, like I know I done Rex like a big fisted dick. No word. I'll let you go now. Try to cry, y'all.
Yeah, that was deep. I appreciate hearing that. I was gonna say something similar to what she was saying about the siblings and things like that, right? I was a foster youth that lived in the projects in Watts, and I had a lot of stigmas and stereotypes and a lot of things just against me, right? Just being from the projects in Watts alone. And I remember being about 14 years old, ninth grade in high school, and I met Sid Stewart, and she came into my life, and she would always talk about God and her relationship with Jesus, but never forced it on me, but just her being herself, I naturally began to have that relationship with God and like really start to believe in God and have faith and just walk with faith. And I say that because my story is truly unique. I truly have favor over my life because when I met Sid, the trajectory of my life changed. The what I believed was possible changed. And this was at 14 years old. I'm keep being able to go to Atlanta, Georgia with Usher. All these opportunities are coming into my life, and I come back home and I look and I see I love my family to life, right? Not to death, but to life. And I looked around and I saw that most of them weren't really doing nothing with their life. Everybody was doing the same thing. Most of them was dependent on the county, not really, interested in really getting a job or doing anything further. And I was like, do I want to be this? Because I know that I can become this. Or do I want to try to become something else? Not just for myself, but for my siblings, for my next door neighbors who was in my dance class that I started to keep them out of trouble from running around the projects. And, like I realized like when I began to have relationship with God, I began to realize that what I was going through was bigger than me. Yeah. It wasn't just about me, but it was so that I can be a vessel to open doors for other youth who come from my situation. And not only that, but do it authentically, right? Do it without having to alter myself, do it without having to change who I am, and just show people like, yeah, I grew up in the projects. Yeah, I was a foster youth who experienced being molested and being abused and traumatic experiences with dogs and just a lot of things that I went through in the system, right? I tell people all the time, my trauma didn't come from dealing with the system. It came from the places I was placed, like my home I was placed in the system. I came from a home where I had a mother's love. I had all of those things. And so when I got the system and I got introduced, not necessarily introduced, but I found God and allowed God to use me. The way that I looked at my situation changed. I started to realize like it's not what happened to me, but what happened for me, so that I can be able to use that power, the courage that I have to share my story to open doors for other people. But for me, I feel like that's what sparked it. Me to say it and seeing her have such a great relationship with God and encouraging me to do that, have the same. I feel like I just had favor over my life when it came to the social workers, when it came to, finding the resources, when it came to just having a all around support system from the people from our community to the people outside of it. I think I couldn't give credit to nobody but God, you know?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna pivot into our last question. And then we'll have a call for action moment. So we were talking a lot about different things such as resilience. You were talking about your story and how you had a lot of supportive adults and supportive people in your life. Overall, how do you think we can improve systems? How can systems be better? How could the child welfare be better? Is it family reunification? Is it looking for adopted parents? Is it, hey, going out into the community and having the community raise the young people? Like, how can we make the system better so a lot of young people don't have to be going through the same thing over and over again? And then for our Tay populations, for the young, the ones that don't end up getting adopted or the ones that move from home to home, how could we make their lives better so when they exit out of care, they feel supported, they feel seen, and they feel heard?
First of all, I would think about your response for a minute. And I think a lot of these questions kind of intertwine with our responses. But there is nothing better than having somebody come into your life and be able to like show God to you, because that's also a lot of where my strength comes from. Is well, I was fortunate enough to have a dad. My biological father introduced that to me from a really, really, really young age. And when you're young, you don't really understand like how God transforms your life until you use him, until you choose that. Like you say, like you were blessed, but you chose that. Like even though you were in a crazy situation and crazy, it could have been so much worse. And you chose like, let me choose a light and see where this goes and do my best. And even if it beats me up a little bit on the way, you gonna get beat up anyway. So you might as well, be my go like the secure path and do it with that light and that love. And I could feel it. Like I could feel that. And you transfer it. Even with you, Sherrie, like you have this light. We have this. I saw this video earlier where it speaks on like people will tell you like you got this love and this light about you. And there's gonna be a lot of people that don't understand it because it takes resilience like to build that. It takes you going through some rough stuff. Yeah. And figuring it out. So like I really love that for you. I wanted to say that. And I think for the navigating challenges as a foster youth question, I think the biggest thing for me was having like mentorship and having like support. Even when I didn't like actively seek it, like having somebody bug me was really how like okay, yeah, I'm gonna figure this out for myself. But we're human. We gonna have cracks. Um, with things that we can't fulfill on our own. I think I kind of built this idea that I needed to do everything on my I couldn't and trust and depend on nobody. I couldn't trust my parents to take care of me or build a stable life. I couldn't really do that on my own as a kid. So I think having people, from the heart outside of work hours come and say, hey, have you done this yet? We talk about this. What do you want to do outside of the system? What did you want to do before you entered the system? What are your goals and your aspirations as you went through the system? And how can we explore that? Let's make an identity for yourself outside of that. And I think that's where I found a lot of my confidence and my ability to be wow, being in foster care, we different out here. When you've been through the system, doesn't even have to be the foster care system. When you've been through the system, when you've experienced rejection from not just a regular general population, but um just having a question is there something wrong with me? Or I'm having to go through this and nobody else can really relate. Having that support program where you're meeting other youth and you're meeting other people who are hey, yeah, it happens to the people you would think would never occur to. And I think just having that support system, um, school, like I said, going to higher educations, finding my passions through that, finding just things that kind of empowered me as a person, empowered my um, things that I could fill my time with that, you know, showcased my passions outside of the stuff, the negative stuff that we kind of tend to focus on or have to kind of, navigate through, I think was the biggest thing for me too. So, funding helped a lot. Like I said, housing is not something that is guaranteed. Even post the system, it's not a guarantee. So, um, yeah, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, I think, and it's not always on the workers. Even, I've had workers where they didn't know the policies of the rights that I, was supposed to be given. Those are things that I had to figure out myself. So just, making things less, I think, just making things more federal. I think more on a national level, regardless of where you started in foster care, regardless of where you're trying to go. If you've been in the system at all, these are some things that you should be given, including health insurance, including I don't know, a stipend starter or something that gives you a sense of support outside of having to depend or rely on anybody else. I think that was one of the biggest things for me.
Yeah, I like all of that. A mouthful. Yeah. I agree though, especially with just the resources and things like that. I was gonna say that I think a way that we can improve the system is just paying the social workers more? Are the people at the top of the food chain willing to take a paycheck to make sure that the people that work for them, that reports to them are comfortable and can survive and can make a stable living? I feel like a lot of social workers get into it with the passion of helping and really changing the kid's life. But then when you working at a job that you're passionate about, but then you go home and you shit, I got a bill due in 2 weeks and this check ain't gonna be enough to cover this and groceries because I'm making too much to get food stamps, you know what I mean? And so I can easily come to work frustrated and lose sight of why I'm here because I'm not making that much money, but I'm seeing my bosses pull up in Benzes and nice cars, but I'm struggling. You know what I mean? And they expect me to show up and do 50 caseloads in a month and, you know what I mean? Really overwork me and not pay me what should be a qualified enough pay for the work that you asking me to do. Not only that, like she said, the resources, sometimes social workers are not privy of the resources that's out there. And just having access to that could change the game for those social workers when they realize, oh, yeah, I got to handle these 50 caseloads, but I know about Right Way Foundation who can help me with this housing and that take a burden off of me having to worry about this youth being homeless. I know an organization over here that helps with teaching kids rights. You got NFYI, you got CYC. You know what I mean? You got CASA LA, so when social workers are aware of what's out there, they can understand that the burden is not theirs alone to bear. They got people who are willing to bear the burden with them and help make that caseload a little lighter, so having being privy of that information that's out there, being willing to pay them more, you know what I mean, and pay the heads and the top of these food chains less. Not only that, reallocation of funding, a lot of the funding goes to the same people, and clearly they haven't been doing what needs to be done to make the change that needs to be made. So why not start reallocating some of those funds to the organizations and the people in the system and out here in the world that are putting in the work to make these changes happen? So reallocation of funding, higher pay for our social workers, our attorneys from the Children Law Center, and other people that's contributing, and just really making it more accessible for these social workers to know that, like I said, the burden is not theirs to bear alone.
Right. I really like what you said. We're going to call the action moment, but I really wanted to highlight what you both said. I do think now that I'm working in the working world and I have a full-time job and stuff like that, and I'm very knowledgeable about a lot of the resources. So a lot of people come to me, they're like, oh, well, Sherrie, you know everything. So, and I'm like, well, I have to do this newsletter. I have to do this. I have to do this and I have to do this. But you're also telling me, and I'm like, I need to be paid for all this extra stuff. And it's not that. I think too, a lot of people think like, hey, but it's passion. Like you have to work, it's passion. But the thing is too, I also got to go home and eat. I also got, I myself, I'm self-sufficient. I don't have to take care of anyone, but a lot of social workers may have families. Yeah. So it's like, it's not even just about passion. It's also about survival. If I'm not okay, how am I going to make sure these kids are okay?
Yeah.
And I also think, as you were saying, with the reallocation, that reallocation needs to be going in the pockets of you and you. Lived experience, you actually went through the system, that understand the system and can figure out the gaps. You guys have the sauce already from what you guys been through, but also too, you guys have the passion, you have the support, you know what works, what doesn't. So I think when you guys are merging all those things together, it makes a system better, but it's also a broken system to where for this progress to move, it needs to be like in platforms like this today, where we're talking about in a podcast. So people can see real life force like, hey, this is what's going on. And these are lived experts. These are people that are in their professions just talking about these things. And then also too, you guys are doing very well for yourself, but I'm pretty sure you guys still struggle with things from the system.
Oh, yeah.
That you wish you're like, dang, like if I would have known, or if I would have known that about that resource, dang, like I could have been into. Oh yeah. So the next question is call to action. What do you want to tell people? I know you just kind of hit on a lot of this stuff, but in a minute or two, talk about what do you want to tell people? There's young people watching this. There's government officials. There's so many different people watching this, people that are working one-on-one with you. What do you want to tell for the youth that is going through something like very devastating? Maybe they're moving from home to home. Maybe they got their first F. Maybe they're having a hard time. Maybe they're in a juvenile hall. What do you want to tell them to inspire them and motivate them to keep going on? And then what do you want to tell the people that are working with the youth as far as the best way to support these youth, as the system could be crazy and chaotic at times?
I think,
No, go ahead.
I think the first thing that I would want to say is it took me a long time to understand this, but speak up. Nobody knows what you're going through if you don't speak up about it. The home that I was being abused in, when I went to court, the judge saw something was wrong. She asked me what was wrong. I decided to speak up. And because I spoke up, I ended up in the home with my big mama, who I was born on her couch. It's a long story, but I ended up in a home with family, with relatives, where I was loved, and I had what I needed, because I spoke up to the young people. Your voice matters. It does. I know sometimes it may not feel like your voice matters, because maybe you was in a situation where you was like, I didn't do that. I really didn't do it, but nobody believes you. Or you was in a situation where something happened to you, or you went to somebody for help and they let you down, they failed you. But don't give up, and don't let that be the thing that dim you or make you feel like your voice don't matter, because your voice matters. And just keep sharing and keep speaking up for yourself. Keep advocating for yourself. I want you to know it's easier said than done, but it's possible if you just believe and know that, like, I'm a result of speaking up and knowing that my voice matters. And to the people that's serving youth, that's working with youth, I want y'all to remember to always operate with integrity. Sometimes you get in this and then you see a lump sum of money and you get excited, oh my God, and you forget about the mission. You forget about what's important, which is the young people and you. You know what I mean? You get money from the success stories, so you forget about the ones who are not success stories. Don't forget about the kids that didn't make it through the program. Don't give up on them. Allow them to come back 2, 3, 4, however many times they need to get it, because sometimes it take us multiple times before we can grasp the concept of what it is that's there, what's available in front of us. But don't give up on these young people, and remember to operate in integrity. We're not going to always be in 100% integrity, but don't forget that the people you're dealing with are humans, not paychecks, not numbers for you to get more funding, so make sure that you remember that you're dealing with human beings, and to always operate with integrity. And yeah, check in with your youth. Check in with them. Don't turn your back on them when they fail, because that's when a foster youth know you're really there, when you show up for them even when they fail. So yeah.
Right. There's nothing better than that type of support. And that was gonna be my answer too. Like it's my son. You gotta speak up for yourself. At the end of the day, you are your own best advocate. Yeah, you can, think that there's gonna be other support, but you always have to ask for help. And it's hard because a lot of the times it's given responsibilities to us. It's a burden that we have to carry, just being in a situation like that. But at the end of the day, like, you have to speak up for yourself. Um, and if you don't know how to, you literally just have to tell your story. Tell your story. You also be very cautious of who you're telling your story to. Go to the people that can make a difference, that have the power to do something. And if they can't do it, go to the higher ups. Get a little Karen on them. Listen. Don't play with your life, man. Literally. It changes you as a person. You develop your character, and it it's kind of like baby steps, block by block, but you learn to do it because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that really can get you from Z to A, as you grow in. So I'd also say to the people working with foster youth and working with system impacted youth, be patient. Please be patient, and don't get into this work if you don't have the heart for it. Don't get into this work if you want to have this cookie cutter idea or this cookie cutter story of like you coming in and being the savior. Like, it's not that. A lot of the times, like, I've seen families take up the responsibility of raising foster youth and they drop the ball, and the foster youth ends up paying like the consequences for it. So yeah, know what you're getting into. If you're open and willing to learn, understand this is not easy work. Don't take it lightly. Be intentional, be patient, but be loving. Just show love, integrity, do the right thing. Just things that we should know as people, as good human beings. I think that gets very, very lost. Like you said, like when people get paid a certain amount or incentivized somehow to do this, it takes hard hearts to be in the system and also work in the system. So, yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. I am so happy that you guys allowed me to be a part of this journey, but also ask you questions. And all the resources provided from Right Way to Better You to even the Guardian Scholars at UCLA or the Guardian Scholars in general, they will be provided with the links below. And thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation and be a part of the change.
Thank you.
Thank you.